Baby, can't you hear my call?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Savage. Welcome to another edition of the Hey Now podcast, along with my sons Jared and Jordan. And today's guest is Kevin Negandhi from ESPN. And our whole pursuit in having and doing this podcast is to explore the origins of greatness and success. First draft. Let's do something here real quick with the NFL season upon us. And I'm a lot older, obviously, than my guys. And I think back to my dad. And the subject is quarterbacks. And the first quarterback, a black quarterback, NFL was Willie Thrower way back early 50s. And I can remember hearing stories about quarterbacks coming out at HBCUs not getting a shot. Things have changed. I've lived to see it. There are 15 African-American quarterbacks who are going to be starting this weekend. Jalen Hurts, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson, Patrick Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, C.J. Stroud, Sean Watson, Caleb Williams, Russell Wilson, Bryce Young. These guys are talented. It's not just that they can run, they can throw. And for a guy of my age to see this is unbelievable because back in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and sometimes into the 70s, you didn't have black guys at decision-making positions, let alone quarterback. We're talking about center. We're talking about middle linebacker. We're talking about strong safety. Things have changed. Now, I had one person suggest to me that this was all about economics because everybody wants to win. You want to have a winning quarterback. And yeah, no question about that. And I think that does factor in. You can think back to Branch Rickey when he brought Jackie Robinson in. Yeah, he wanted to improve his ball club to help make him some money. It wasn't all about altruism. But I think this is a huge development, and hopefully, as the years go by, it will not be something that jumps off the page at you. 15 blacks starting quarterbacks, and I know guys from my generation, that is a big deal. How do you guys feel about that?
It's super cool that we're seeing this, obviously, right now. Even when I was growing up, it was still a stigma. Black quarterback, black athletes can't play the quarterback position. There was always a stigma about intelligence. So it's awesome to see. And I doubt it doesn't seem like there's any stigma nowadays. You know, how like in baseball, when you're growing up, the most athletic, the best player is pitching or playing shortstop. Seems like now in youth football, now that best athlete, best player is playing quarterback. So that's awesome to see, and it just makes sense. Put the best player at the most important position. So, yeah, what do you got?
Black, white, Chinese, teams want to win, and thinking the position, being able to make decisions, find the right receiver, read a defense, I think that is ridiculous that was a stigma in the first place, but we live in America, so not surprising. But let's also be real. These 15 quarterbacks who are starting, if Peyton Manning or Tom Brady were still playing, they would take Deshaun Watson's job. If Tom Brady was the Tom Brady of the 35-year-old Tom Brady, he would take a few of these guys' jobs. But these guys are the best at the position in the league right now, and that's why I think they're getting the nod.
I want to throw in one quick last personal note. I finished my sophomore year in high school, and I could really throw. I wasn't real mobile, but they put me at quarterback. And I threw a touchdown pass first play of the game against the team. Well, short post, Charlie Thompson caught it, touchdown. Threw the next pass. I thought he was going out. He went in. Pick goes the other way. We wound up losing the game. But my point is, I was quarterbacking, just straight stuff. And I'll never forget this. The board of directors' son all of a sudden shows up from another school. He couldn't throw the ball as well as I could, nor was he, and I was a better athlete. And I wound up back on the O-line as a tight end the following year. I'm still ticked off at that, and that's many, many moons ago. Hey, and let me tell you something. We talked to Ken Griffey Jr. the other day, and your mother asked him something about a play, and he detailed it down to who the umpire was and what the dude said. So you guys as athletes, you probably remember the moments that pissed you off more than the winning moment.
It was that fateful pick. You could have been Doug Williams for Doug Williams.
Yeah, it could have been. Hey, I was 5-step drop, 7-step drop, and let that bad boy fly. And the last thing, guys of my generation, baby boomers, I get a kick out of watching SEC football because your grandfather, I'll never forget this Thanksgiving. Actually, it was a Southwest Conference game. It was Texas and Texas A&M. They said, I don't know if we'll ever see any homies playing on that team, on those teams. And now the greatest employer of young black men is the freaking SEC Conference in football and basketball, but to football especially. It is amazing. I've lived long enough to see this over these last, 10, 15 years. That's just a titanic change. Oh my God, tsunami. Just amazing. So anyway, that's a baby boomer's perspective.
There, Brian is rolling over in his grave. Oh, where Mama, go that man.
Hey, our show today, you're going to really like Kevin Negandhi, unique background. And he is a front-facing guy at ESPN, 6 p.m. Eastern on SportsCenter. He is killing it. And he also does a lot of most of the wraparound stuff, college football season. Kevin Negandhi, our guest this week on the Hey Now podcast. Hi, everybody. I'm Dave Sims. This is another edition of Hey Now, the Dave Sims Show. And on this program, we want to explore pivotal moments that have shaped successful careers of people in sports and entertainment. And today, we are thrilled to have a guy on who I think is as suave as they come. He's the host of SportsCenter at 6 o'clock Eastern every day. He's a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and he is excellent at what he does. And he's got an extensive media credentials. It's been with ESPN since 2006. He's a Temple University guy. In fact, when he was at Temple University, he was listening to me call their football games back in like 1990. Unbelievable. Kevin Negandhi joins us right now. Kev, thanks for joining us, man. How you doing?
It's an honor, man. It's great seeing you, Dave, and I appreciate you waking up on the West Coast and doing what you do so well.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Jared Sims, my son, is here, our oldest son. Jordan is getting his work done right now, so he will not join us here today. He's got some work to do, some class work to do, but he sends his regards. He's as big as this is a big Eagles fan. We could do Eagles for 2 hours. We'll do that maybe another time when we get closer to the season. That'd be great. Hey, let's start early years, man. Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, was that northwest of Philly. It's a suburb. You go to school at Temple, so you wanted to stay close to home, huh? Temple University, Dave, right in mid-to Philly.
A lot of people don't know the background of the story. I originally did not want to go to Temple. My brother was at Temple, and my brother originally went to Penn State. He's 7 years older than me. Then he transferred to Temple, and my mom was insistent, hey, Temple's a phenomenal school when it comes to communications. I wanted to go branch out. I was like, no, I want to get out of this whole area, I want to be the next Bob Costas, Marv Albert, Dick Stockton. You know where I'm going. So I wanted to go to Syracuse. And I applied to like 9 schools, and it was down to USC and Syracuse. I knew I wouldn't study at USC. Turns out I didn't really study at Syracuse. There's too much snow. I lasted 1 semester, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want to deal with the winter. I didn't want to deal with not getting the opportunities early because there's so many. You go to Syracuse to be a broadcaster, and you're in a room of hundreds and hundreds of people, and I just wasn't going to get that immediate opportunity. I'd have to wait till my junior and senior year. Yep. So the best decision I ever made, I always say this, is listening to my mom and deciding to transfer and go to Temple, and the rest is history.
Man, oh man,
Mom's always right? Mom is always right. I don't want to admit it when it's the case. I never want to admit it, but I always find that mom's always right.
Jared, 100%. And the backstory with my mom, I mean, she's, this 5'1" fire plug, firecracker, and she goes to North Broad on her own without telling me, meets a whole bunch of people in the School of Communications, collects all this information. So my semester at Syracuse, 2 months in, I tell her I'm not sure if I really want to do this anymore at Syracuse. Within a week, in my mailbox in the dorm was all this Temple stuff. And she's like, well, maybe you want to consider it. She had already done the research.
A gentle push.
She knew better.
Maybe not so gentle.
Yeah,
oh, man,
she knew better.
Shove. Holy
knew
mackerel. Did you live on campus, or did you find it, because it's right on Broad Street?
Yeah.
I know you didn't commute from Phoenixville because that's a ride. You don't do that.
I commuted from King of Prussia, which is not far from Phoenixville,
Okay.
just 25 minutes off the Schuylkill, depending on the
Right.
traffic.
Sure.
I lived with my brother. I had a place with him because he was running a couple of Subway restaurants that he owned
Nice.
with my dad. So for me, it worked out really well that I was on my own at the same time. But to be honest with you, Dave and Jared, I was never home. Once I decided to go to Temple, I decided that my life is going to be on campus or in Philadelphia doing an internship or working to pay rent. So I did 5 internships. I found a way to get past like the limit of internships, and we camouflaged it as independent studies. I started working.
I love the angle, man.
The college radio station, calling play-by-play for women's hoops. Eventually, the college TV station. I worked at WIP as an intern that turned into a producer. I did stringer work for the Gannett News Service for USA Today for the Big Five, and I worked at Champs so I can make some money to pay for the rent. So, like, I was doing all this stuff while being at school, and I just said it doesn't matter where I sleep; it just matters where I'm at. 18 hours a day, and I never wanted to look back.
5 internships. I tell guys all the time, you got to get an internship and try to get it early. What year that first internship? I got mine after my sophomore year. How about you? What year was that?
I got mine, Dave, my sophomore year in the booth with Harry Callis and Whitey and Richie Ashburn.
Out of here, Michael Jack Schmidt. The Phillies have a 7-5 lead.
Yeah, 100%, Dave. And so to me, it was, I'm 20. I'm in the booth with them. I'm doing stats for them and talking to the truck and getting information, giving it to those 2 guys. And I just basically soaked it up. And that was an internship with Channel 17 in Philadelphia. So, Mike Dardis, John Agri. So those guys were running it behind the scenes. Dardis was the anchor there at the time. Yeah. So I was doing all that stuff. That was my first internship. And I learned a heck of a lot just those 4 months.
You were in by that point. At that point, that's 100% up to your eyeballs commitment that you're going to be in this business. And you're right. I know that feeling. And boy, what a picture you paint there.
It was amazing. And you know what? Like, so after that, to your point, Dave, like after that, I was hooked, right? And it was like, what's next? What's next? So then I got an internship at the Fan. Remember the magazine that Miss Anelli put together? I was doing that because I had to learn how to be a sports writer. And then that led into me doing an internship with Ron Burke and Vi Sikahema at Channel 10.
Oh, I know all these guys.
Yeah. Great. And then right after that, I did an internship at Channel 6 with Papa, Phil Andrews, Scott Palmer, all those guys took Jack Brayboy.
I competed against those guys. I competed against all those guys when I was at KYW in 84, 85.
Yes. So all those guys like Mark Meany, they all took me in, and I was really hungry. I always tell interns, if you show initiative, people will help you in the business. If you expect people to give you anything, no one's going to do anything. They're going to just say, all right, that person doesn't want it. So I really, really wanted it. And then the internship at WIP turned into a producer job my final 2 years in college. So like all it was relationship building. And then knowing somebody that knows somebody that eventually knows somebody. And then boom, 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 you're networking and then you're in.
That's my creed, pal. That's my creed. Amen. You nailed it. You aced it. Jarrett, I mean, how many times have you heard me say that?
A million times. As far as one thing, gotta want it. Also, like whenever there was somebody who I was, Dad, you would introduce me to, call him, motherfucker.
Yes.
Call him.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'll bring up another point to your dad emphasizing that. Mark Zumoff, Temple grad.
Yeah,
he knew a couple of professors, and he came in, and he was amazing. Like he would analyze my tapes, he would send me copious notes, and then one thing he taught me that was amazing, he was like, create a filing system when you meet somebody, write it down what the conversation was, so when you talk back to them, you could update that that whole list that you have, and then go back and have the conversation with them and remind them what you talked about. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So while I was at Temple, you're in Market 4. You're rubbing elbows with everybody at the Daily News while you're covering John Chaney, right? You're watching how everybody acts in a news conference and asks those questions. You're comparing your story to the next day at the Temple News to the Daily News, the writers. You were in class every single day while you were doing your internship, while you were doing everything you were doing as a job, and then going to school. And I always tell people that was the greatest training ground for me.
Let me tell you something. You just answered all the questions of any aspiring broadcasters who are either in college or due to in their first or second job when they ask me. This is the exact same roadmap. And dude, you just laid that out. That is a primer for all aspiring. And it goes for not just our industry and the broadcast industry. I think it goes for everything. It's the American way. I mean,
Totally.
Your path is, it's quite familiar to me, and I love it. It's absolute. It's exciting, man. I remember going through a slightly different scale at different time, but the whole emphasis and the target. Oh God, it's just perfect. It
and
really
Dave,
is.
I'll share one quick story, which I think you'll love too, to kind of put a button on this thing.
Yeah.
This business is so small that every relationship, don't burn it. Every relationship can count down the road. Because Dave, I did a high school sports show while I was at Temple my senior year, put together by Ross Productions. And then right after I was done, you would pop up because you did the Eagles pregame on Fox. So that's how I introduced myself to you on TV, where I was like, oh my God, I know that guy. So down the road, I knew who you were. And then when I was covering Temple hoops, there was a guy who was writing for the Philadelphia Inquirer. His beat was Temple hoops. He'd walk in a suit every news conference. This is when John Chaney was John Chaney, the legend. And we were, top 10 in the country. No one wanted to face us in the mid 90s. Right. And you see guys that reporters, Daily News, Inquirer around the country, all dressed up in polos. And this guy would be dressed up to the nines in a suit. And one day I went up to him and I said, help me understand, why are you dressed up like this? You write for the Inquirer. Why are you dressed up like this every single night? And he goes, Kevin, if you want to be the part, you got to look the part. You got to present yourself. That guy was Stephen A. Smith.
There you go.
And here I am, a 20-year-old learning from Stephen A. Smith. And then you look back now in my career, 2006, I get to ESPN. I reach out to him. And it was, I shared the story. And then we're hosting the draft together, on ABC for the last 4 years. I'm doing First Take. I'm doing whatever I'm doing with him. I'm bringing him on SportsCenter. Wow. Small business. It's all about relationships.
Stephen A. Smith was on the Dion Look Good.
Feel good.
Feel good. Feel good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he got you on that early.
Exactly.
Yeah. And he also joined us when I was doing a talk show on the Metro Channel in Manhattan. We did that, I think, 99 and 2000. And he came in, he was pressed. He came in a nice suit and everything. I remember he was still at the Inky. He was still at the Inky at that time. So he mentioned 06 and joining ESPN. Let me just back up for a second. Before you got there, so you go from Temple and then you get this first really big job in Sarasota, Florida. So here it is. You're an Indian American gentleman from the greater Philadelphia area out of Temple University, and you go to Sarasota, Florida. A little bit of a culture change, I would think.
Yeah. I got one even more, Dave. My first job was in Kirksville, Missouri. I did that at KTVO in Kirk. It was like 225 markets. It was market 199. And there were 3 colleges in town. And it's a great story. My first time I do a live shot at KTVO. My sports director sends me out to do a rodeo. I'm doing a live shot at a rodeo.
You're
right?
Dude from Philly doing a rodeo.
Yeah, exactly. So I make a joke with him. And I'm first generation American. My family came from India. And they toss out to me, and I say to Jeremy, his name's Jeremy Woods. I said, Jeremy, I'm an Indian surrounded by cowboys. It was a great, hey, welcome to the heartland. We had a blast. It was 13 months of learning. You know, a lot of people, this is another thing that I tell kids. A lot of people were like, why are you taking this job? I was making 15 grand. I said, because I need to make mistakes every single day and I need to learn live TV. And it was an amazing training ground. The people were really, really sweet and thoughtful. And then I make the jump to Sarasota, Florida. And to your point, that is another shock because Florida is a completely different thing. When I was really lucky being in that market because we had 5 spring training teams. I was covering the Gators, the Knowles, and the Canes, all in that peak. Peter Warwick was from the area that I was covering. IMG was there. The Bucks started playing well with Tony Dungy and that whole young crew.
I was doing preseason games for them at that point. Yeah.
So you could see it. So I was really lucky. I was in the middle of all of that, and it gave me phenomenal sports experience. And then I fell in love with college football then and there.
Yeah, it paid off. It's working for you because you do the ESPN. That's the other thing too. During baseball season, like because you guys, if we're on the West Coast. I can tune into you guys at 9 o'clock Pacific time, and there you are. You put in a full day there, right? I mean, that's it. You're there 12, 13 hours on air, let alone being in the building. So you must be in. Do you do that at Manhattan, or you do it up in Connecticut?
Our studios are in Bristol, Connecticut. They moved them around. I want to say 2015. John Saunders and the crew. They were based in New York. Him and Jesse Palmer. God bless John. Rest in peace.
Amen.
They moved the studios to Bristol, and then I took over in 2017, and we've been in there. And you're right, it is a full day. You're there 10 in the morning. You walk. I walk probably at midnight, and you're exhausted. And my wife jokes with me all the time. She's like, that's not really work, though. I said, it's work. She's like, no, you're not. You're watching football. You're with Booger. You're with all your buddies. Dan Orlovsky. You're watching games. And I'm like, it's fun, but I'm lucky I get paid to do something I love.
You're exhausted. Are you wired, though, when you come home?
Decompressing. What's it like, man? That's a great question.
So I'll give you an example of that experience for me this past year because I coached my 2 boys in flag football on Sundays. So what was killer for me was you come home at midnight, 12:30, and you don't go to bed. I don't go to bed till 2, kind of because you're here the entire time, right?
Got to land the plane. You have to land the plane.
Exactly. And then you pop up at 7 in the morning, making sure we're ready to go because most of our games potentially are 8 or 9, and it's a full for me. The cool thing, Jared, it's important on Sundays. I am present. So we make it a whole football Sunday. So we have our games and then we go get something to eat or we'll get some food for basically football from 1 o'clock all the way till Sunday night. It's time to go upstairs and put the kids to bed. And then I'll come back downstairs and watch the rest of the Sunday night game. We're all in. I got the kids into fantasy football. I got the kids into some pools in the house. Hey, we all make our picks. So they're all in on everything and the whole experience. So Sundays are pretty special for our family.
Your kids are going to end up in Vegas. They're going to end up in Vegas. They're going to have gigs out there.
Dave, we don't do lines. We don't do lines. We just do pick 'em. We do pick 'em. That's it. So they're all locked in. We do it on Saturdays and Sundays, and then whoever's at the house, they come in and make picks. Uncle Booger McFarland will come to the house one day with donuts. He's making picks that day. Uncle Mark Sanchez, when he used to be with us, he's making picks that day. Everybody goes in and we all compare.
That's a show in itself.
It's great. It's great.
Wow. Yeah.
Kevin, my brother and I used to always knock on our father when he would do the Green Bay Packers, Philadelphia Eagles. Dad, who do you got? I'm in Vegas right now. Help me out with a pick.
Yeah.
We learned if we picked the opposite. Dad, I'm sorry, I had to go. If we picked the opposite, we would have made about, I don't know, $20, $30 million by now.
Yeah. I just want to call him, man. I don't want to pick him.
I understand.
Hey, man, that was something. I want to turn attention to when you get the SportsCenter gig, the 6P job,
Yeah.
and you replaced Jamel and Michael.
When Dave Roberts, who oversaw everything, when he took over, and Mike and Jamel are doing their thing, they were doing something completely different. Rob King at the time had this vision. Rob King's also the guy that created SportsCenter AM. He's the one that had the vision of SVP having his show, and Michael and Jamel. So like when you're doing something that the audience isn't used to, and their storytelling was unique and different because it was so successful with Numbers Never Lie. And for me, like, I always talked to Michael and Jamel because I thought they were groundbreaking and I love what they were doing. And specifically, I had several conversations with Michael about, hey, you're doing great. Like everything you're doing makes sense. Everything fits into who you guys are. But the problem is also then you have the SportsCenter brand come on top, and then the SportsCenter angle is now completely taking over the thoughts of what you've been used to and the freedom that you had in Numbers Never Lie, right? And then when you have that, and then it became His and Hers. His and Hers had like an identity. And then you have SportsCenter here, and SportsCenter is like, we do it this way. His and Hers is like, no, we are comfortable doing that way. So then they combine those things, and it's really, really hard to find your way while you're doing a daily show every day. When I was given the opportunity to slide in and they were changing the format, I was from 2006. I came from a SportsCenter background.
Right.
And it was always, hey, what's SportsCenter? What's SportsCenter? What's SportsCenter? And that's completely different from, hey, what's His and Hers, right? So my job was just, hey, what do I know? Stay in my lane, do what I know, what's best in my comfort zone, right?
Right.
And so I went with the, hey, SportsCenter, let's stick to SportsCenter. That's what I know. And, with Elle Duncan, my co-host now for the last 3 years, she's been incredible because Elle has found a way to blend in who she is, blend in her personality, because she also grew up the SportsCenter way when she came to ESPN. She did a lot of those morning sports centers. She found a way to blend in and still do her own thing, and so we found a way to kind of say, all right, how do we still stay true to ourselves, but how do we also make sure we're still with SportsCenter's brand, right? And we've done a really good job of the back and forth. There were challenges, and Dave, there were a lot of challenges. And I got to tell you, what was really important to me was when, like, I was offered the 6 p.m. gig. It was about 6 weeks after Michael Smith had signed off, and Jamel by then had moved on. It was important to me that I call both of them and say, hey, are you guys okay? I just want to make sure I let you know that I was offered this job to be one of the co-hosts on the 6P SportsCenter. This is really important to me that I make sure out of respect to you two, because I love those two people. I respect those two people to the highest form, and I actually enjoyed what they were doing, but they needed to understand that I was offered the job. And the great thing about this, Dave,
you weren't said you weren't backstabbing them or anything like that. You just wanted to get their blessing that, hey, we're cool, we're good, that whole thing.
Totally. And it was important that they knew that. And both of them told me, you don't have to make this phone call. We know where you're at. We know who you are. Both of them understood how much respect I have and had for them at the time, right? And I still think those two are trailblazers in whatever they do. And I thought they were ahead of their time with the whole vision that Rob King originally had. So it was important that I talked to them because to me, if they had an issue, we would talk the whole thing out and make sure we were all in line. And for them to just say, Kev, like, we've moved on. Like, whatever you're doing has nothing to do with what we're doing right now. And that was important.
And they were rooting for you, it sounds like.
They were, and they're amazing teammates, friends, and I'm really lucky. Like, to your point, like, there was no, hey, I hope that show fails. It wasn't directed at me. They understood that it was a complete clean break because the show that I took over was a SportsCenter show that wasn't, Michael and Jamel and the Six.
Unbelievable. Amazing.
You said there were challenges. I'm just curious with the current show, right? Like, what were some of those challenges? I'm curious, and sort of how did you overcome them?
Well, the show right now that Elle and I do is it's a fun show, and Elle and I talk about it. We go home and we don't take our work home. And when you can work with somebody who is going to be your friend after the show, who years from now, no matter what, is going to be your partner, whether you're on the air together or not, is so important. That
Let me tell you something, dude. You are right on the money with that, and consider yourself blessed.
I feel blessed. I've been through some stuff, Dave, where when you're not in line with somebody and you got to go on the air and the chemistry's not there.
Bingo.
And I am really, really lucky that Elle and I were really good friends before, and whatever happens, we'll be great friends after. And together, we're there to uplift each other and make each other look good. And that's really, really important, I think, if you're doing a show, especially day in and day out on TV in front of people, because organically, you can't fake it. You could try to fake it. And if you do fake it,
you know what I always say, Kev, if you were that good an actor, you'd be on freaking Broadway. Okay. I mean,
true.
Count those lucky stars that you got a relationship like that. That is huge.
So true.
And the other thing, and Elle has taken a significant role in pushing and working in women's hoops, and especially this year, it's worked out really well for her, given all the explosive things that are happening right now.
Absolutely. And I was lucky to host the women's tournament for 4 years when UConn won 4 in a row with Brianna Stewart. I always make a joke to Gino. I was like, hey, ever since I left, you haven't won. What's that tell you? Because Gino's a Norristown guy.
He's a Philly guy.
And me and him, we have fun with each other. And
he's a good dude.
When the opening was up for that job and Maria Taylor had left, I remember after a SportsCenter show, I pulled Elle to the side. I said, you should try out for this. And she's like, well, you think so? I said, you'd be great at this. I said, you could really excel. And I think a couple of other people got in her ear as well. And thankfully she was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. And she has thrived in that environment. And she's a star.
Well, it's good to know you guys so close. I'm going to take with me this conversation. Next broadcast I watch of yours, see you as Ron Burgundy and Veronica Corningstone in the third act of Anchorman, like after they patch things up. Do you ever prank each other at all on set?
Do we ever? No. I mean, like we have fun with each other. If you guys have ever seen when the Phillies and Braves play each other, or when we dig into each other.
I hear it all the time.
Yeah, so there's those little digs. I mean, she got me good when the Hawks knocked off the Sixers a few years ago. In the last 2 years, the Phillies have entered the Braves season in the postseason. So we've had a lot of fun with that.
Hey, Kev, let me throw this at you too, man. You and I are sort of in unique positions as people of color.
Yeah.
And to have a front-facing person. I mean, when I was growing up, you never even thought I'd ever see that. I mean, Bill White was the first Black American I saw do play-by-play. Is one of my all-time heroes. And it gladdens my heart, and this is almost like a promo for ESPN, but the people up there who are doing the hiring do an unbelievable job. And they've hired a whole bunch of, you go right down the list of guys of color talking about basketball and football. We need more on baseball, and that's a whole nother topic. But the fact that there are that many front-facing people of color doing sports gladdens my heart tremendously. I'm a lot older than you are. And it's something I thought I'd never see, having lived through the civil rights era in the 60s. And it means so much for kids who are on the come now following you guys. And I think what you guys have done is just absolutely, what you're doing is absolutely fantastic. And you set the bar really high. And I can't say enough, can't applaud you enough, man, because it means a lot to me. I mean, you, Adam, Amin, you're my South Asian brothers, man.
And Dave, I appreciate that. And what makes me really proud, no one looked like me on TV back in the 90s.
Right.
And then to when I got that job in Kirksville in 1998, I was the second Indian American to do sports, like local sports in American television history.
Wow. Who was the first? Do you know?
Raj Mathai, who is still in San Jose, and now he's the news anchor there. So
Wow.
Raj beat me, and Raj is a great guy, because when I found out that he was already in, I was like, okay, there's somebody else. Like, he was the guy. So when I got to ESPN, yeah, when I got to ESPN in 06, I was the first one of Indian descent to be at a major network in TV history, American TV history, to be of Indian descent.
You are both Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby.
yeah. You're not kidding. But I can tell you this. Every time I went on the air, I carried the weight of that for a while. Like, hey, man, like, listen, you only get one opportunity to make a first impression, and you're not making the first impression for yourself. You're doing it for a lot of people. And what made me really, really happy is, since then, seeing Anish Shroff, Zubin Mehenti, Adnan Burke, first Dari Noka, who's a half Iranian, Adam Amin, Nabil Kareem, like, seeing all these guys. And what's amazing, Aditi Kinkawala, what's amazing is, specifically, we are good at our job. So to your point, Dave, we are not just hired to say, hey, we got to check a box. We have all stayed where we're at and maintained and elevated. And that is so important, I think, for an audience to understand the credibility that we didn't just get this job. We earned this job. We maintained this job. We weren't given any breaks. No one, like, even to a point where I had to have my stuff even more in check, because I knew that if I failed, that there was no, hey, give them the benefit of the doubt. I didn't have the benefit of the doubt.
Hey, you had to be. That's the same speech I gave Jarrett and Jordy, and the speech as an African American. Hey, man, you got to be twice as good to just be even. So you got to, you got to really bulk it up. You got to bump it up and keep bumping it up all the time.
I think it's true. It's a big weight to carry, kind of like you mentioned too. Is that something that was ever present in your mind, as far as have to be twice as good? Yeah,
Jared, all the time. And then when social media, came through, and like, when I popped on social media in 2009, I would hear stuff like, the usual, the terrorist comments, like, why are you on my? So you got to build that credibility over time, that now when people see me, they just see me as, I know that guy, he's good. Nothing else is determined. And then for there are so many young Indian Americans, Pakistani Americans that I run into and say, my parents needed to see you so then I could do what you're doing. And like that means the world to me. But I don't think about it anymore now. But those first 4 or 5 years on ESPN, man, there was a lot of weight on my shoulders that unnecessarily no one else put it on there. I did, but I also knew what I was entering.
So what you're telling me is you send out there were a lot of requests by mail for autographs and autograph pictures, and you send out a bunch, and you carry some in your briefcase, correct?
Yes, Dave. That is accurate at certain times. Yeah.
Hey, let's go back to and Jared. We always kick around a lot of hoops and talking about Stephen A. and the NBA coverage and everything. During the draft, you, Stephen A., Bob Myers, my man Wilbon. That's a crew, man. That's a crew. What was that dynamic like for you?
So it was the first time that it's year 4 for me on ABC, and it's the first time we had Bob on. And so this year was unique compared to last year. Last year was a lot of storytelling, and we could talk while the draft picks were going on. So this is a little inside baseball here, I think, for anybody. But if you're in the business, I think you could appreciate and understand. My job is 5 minutes are on the clock for every pick. We only did the first round. My job is to make sure we give the kid the draft pick the night of his life, right?
Yes,
we make sure the crowd is enjoying, once the commissioner makes the announcement, the crowd is enjoying the moment with him, and he has a moment for him for the rest of his life. Then we've got to go to a vignette. A vignette introduces, it's a video and vignette that introduces this player to a national audience, the ABC audience, a little bit different from an ESPN audience, right?
Totally.
Then we got to toss to Monica McNutt, who has the one-on-one interview with the player.
She's great, by the way.
Phenomenal, right? And then when she tosses back, we've got give or take 2.5 to 3 minutes to either talk about that pick, talk about that team, or set up the next pick. So in that time, I've got my notes. I've got, and especially this year, very challenging because we had also a lot of Euro players. So I've got to introduce this player to America, right? And say why he was such a good player, how does it translate and all that. Get enough notes in, but at the same time, my job is to make sure you're there to watch Stephen A. Smith, and everybody knows it, to make sure Stephen A. can organically come in, and Stephen A. will have the look when, hey, come on in, right? I lay out, he's good. Then Bob and him have a great chemistry, and they've worked together through Countdown this past year. So my job was to make sure I put it on a tee and let those guys swing, easy swing through, and constantly hit home runs. So my job, and then the producers in my ear also saying, hey, we're about 20 seconds from the commissioner. He's about to come out. At the same time, put a little bow while they're done. Or if they bleed into it and it's like 4, 3, and I put my hand up and say, the commissioner's at the podium, pick number 12, and then nail it and give him that moment again. So that is going on for those 3.5+ hours. But at the same time, here's the one thing I was really, really happy about. Afterwards, Dave, the feedback that I got from anybody that watched it is you guys had fun. And if we can have fun and educate the audience, it's very much to...
It's a win.
Yes, and it's very much to Stuart Scott's mantra, the late, great Stuart Scott. I will inform you, but I will entertain you. And my belief has always been that way. I'm not Stuart Scott, but I will make sure you are informed. You will know something. If you ever watched a Stuart Scott highlight, he gave you information while entertaining you, right?
No doubt.
It wasn't just the catchphrases. So my job is to make sure I bring out the best in those two guys together. They have fun. And then at the same time, the audience can still learn something in the whole process. And then we go to the next pick.
Friend of mine in Spain, we were watching for the Knicks pick, seeing what the Knicks were going to do, and stuck with it because you brought that level of entertainment to it. And it was fun watching Stephen A. and Myers with their play fight, like on the playground, going back and forth.
Yeah, they genuinely like each other, right? And for me, the role of the guy that's playing "quote unquote" traffic cop, even though I don't like it, but people look at it.
That's what it is, though. Yeah,
is to make sure the audience sees the two best guys, and they're basically a fly on the wall in the green room, and these two guys are themselves having a conversation. Dave, you can understand this.
Oh, totally.
When the best conversations that happen are usually in the green room. Why? Because the guys that are going to be on the air with you, they're basically, everybody is disarmed and everybody's just sitting there chopping it up and being themselves. And I've always told guys, don't look at the camera. The camera is there as the audience is just sneaking in and listening to us just chopping it up. And that's the whole goal.
Amen. I couldn't agree more.
I'm just curious. Hey, Dad, real quick. Kevin, if you had to, it sounds like you're a point guard, right? So who would you say your style is like if we had to go? I love 90s basketball.
Yeah.
Basketball point guard, you on the air. Who are you most similar to?
Woo, wow.
That's
you know
good
what?
Question.
Listen, it's a really good question. I would I'll bring it home here as a Sixers guy. I would say I'm Maurice Cheeks. And I'm surrounded by Dr. J and Moses Malone and
Bobby Jones
and Bobby Jones and Andrew Toney. And I'm my job is to feed every now and then. I'll surprise you and I'll go in for a nice layup because the lane is open. If you're going to go 90s, I mean, you could bring a handful of guys. Stockton was a phenomenal playmaker, saw the field and made sure he had enough vision for everybody. I wish I had Magic's flair. I'm not Magic. My job is to make sure this is a clean show and let's go in and out. Magic was the show, right? So,
no doubt, no question.
You walk away, and if you walk away feeling like Stephen A. said something, you learned something at the same time, and you were entertained with him and Bob, then I did my job that night.
He is ESPN, isn't he?
Stephen A.? Yeah, he's great. And no one works harder, Dave, and Jared. Like literally, the guy says yes to everything. I don't understand where he gets his energy. So he is ESPN. He's the face of ESPN. You know, how can I tell that he's the face of ESPN? I think you talk to anybody of any age group, they know who Stephen A. Smith is. My boys who are 10 and 12 know who Stephen A. Smith is. And then I could run into somebody who's in their 70s and they'll know who Stephen A. Smith is. And everybody in between. And that's how you kind of break through to every audience.
Yeah,
I love
it's working.
Yeah, Stephen A. When I first met him, Dad, you introduced us at the Super Bowl Jacksonville.
Eagles. Oh yeah, the Eagles, yeah.
And I was stunned back then. This is almost 20 years ago, and he was like, "Your dad's a very, very great man. He's I've always looked up to him." And I was like, "Man, I was expecting something way different." In person versus when the lights on. But it makes me think too, Dad. You called sumo wrestling the McDonald's All-American game on ESPN way back. Kevin, you mentioned rodeo.
Yeah.
It's like is that the craziest or most sort of off the beaten path thing that you've called in your career?
Ooh, man. The rodeo live shot was interesting. I don't know. Like, I remember I called one tennis event and it was a charity event. I had no idea what I was doing. I was like 24 in Sarasota, and I called a charity event with Martina Navratilova playing it.
Big fan.
She was amazing. And the craziest story I've ever had that actually helped me in local TV, there was a brief 2 or 3 year window called the Sarasota Open. And they would have, Sarasota is very much like West Palm, a lot of money, a lot of tennis, a lot of stars that live there, retired athletes. So, and Bollettieri's there. So they had the Sarasota Open. And I remember doing a live shot, and it was like a 4.5-minute live shot from the Sarasota Open after the event. I had cut the highlights, sent it back, and I had no return.
Oh, jeez.
On the whole, and no return for the audiences. I had no TV monitor. It went out on this live shot. So I have to do multiple highlights, play-by-play highlights.
Just Van City.
Of tennis matches. And I'm only going with the sound of the crowd and the tennis ball to understand the breaks in action of the play-by-play. So it's like close your eyes and call a tennis highlight. And you got to do that for 3.5 minutes. And I had to do that. And that was probably the most challenging experience I've ever had. But I got to tell you, Jared, when that happened to me, and I'm sure Dave has some of those horror moments. When that happened to me, it helped me so much that I could do it. I went through it in local TV. I know down the road it's going to help me in anything. The other horror story that I had was the first time they introduced me in Kirksville, Missouri. They did this whole big thing from Philadelphia. He's our new sports guy, and they had a pedal here with a small little button that we had to run, the anchors, and that ran your prompter. Ooh. And my size 12 foot was so big that when they did the introduction, I turned to the camera and I hit the small button, and the entire prompter went backwards. So for 3.5 minutes, the news anchor is underneath the desk trying to fix it, and I'm ad-libbing the entire show. And it was my first show. And I walked off the set and I said, well, I got a story. And if I can survive that, I can do whatever I want for the rest of my life in this business.
I was going to say it could have been a final story I have as a broadcaster, but it was a good one. It was a good one.
Do you remember sumo wrestling? What was that like? Because I just remember Jordan and I got a lot of drip. Kevin, you brought home some Wu-Tang had just come out with a clothing label, Wu Wear, and that was seeing you do sumo wrestling. Was like, what's he gonna say? What's he gonna do? Does he know sumo wrestling?
I didn't know from Man on the Moon, and I was whoever is with, and da-da-da-da-da-da. So tell us about, Joe Smith, And I just remember my wife was like grossed out because, they're humongous guys and a lot of Japanese guys, and they got American guys who are wannabe guys. And then if that thing, the apparatus that they wear falls off, we got issues. So that became a little bit of a problem. Yeah, it really did. It really did.
God
I think that
bless
was in
you.
Atlanta. Oh, it was, yeah. As a matter of fact, that thing ran before you guys changed format on ESPN. That sucker would pop up at like 3 a.m. Eastern time, and I'd wake up and I'd have text, dude, you did effing sumo wrestling? What the hell is wrong with you? It's like crazy, unbelievable. Hey, let me switch gears for a second. The last time I saw you was in 19. You come to Seattle, Special Olympics. How'd you get
Yeah.
involved in that? And bless your heart for being involved in that whole thing, man. Because that you talk about a worthwhile endeavor and a cause, just a mighty cause that everybody should be involved in.
I was really lucky when we forged a relationship with the Special Olympics ESPN that Kevin Martinez, who runs outreach at ESPN, reached out to me, citizenship, and asked me, hey, I'm targeting you as one of our guys. Would you be interested? And I said, help me understand, like, what's the goal? What do you want? Like, what's the vision? And he's like, I'm going to take you to LA. You're going to see the summer games in LA. It was 2014. So I went out there and I literally saw 3 events. I reached out to him immediately. I was like, count me in.
Yeah.
The enthusiasm and the joy that these athletes have to just be able to be involved in something and to think about it. I think everybody's experienced this. We've all been at recess or an event, and you always look at somebody who's the last person picked and some who are not even picked. And many of these athletes have gone through all that. All they want is to be included. All they want is the chance to be involved. And sometimes we could storytell and break the barrier. Like, all I ever as an Indian American wanted to be involved and accepted in a community, right? So I can understand and relate to that. And if we could share those stories and break those barriers where these athletes then go back to their hometown after performing at the highest level of competition to just be involved, and then they're now the big man or big woman on campus and they can walk around, hold their head up high. It changes not just their life, it changes their family's life. It does everything in the most positive way of just being involved. Because in the end, all we want is to be loved and included. I think it's the most basic human thing, right? And to be able to share on this platform, I've been, a part of the USA Games, the World Games, over the last decade. There's nothing better. It resets you and you understand why you fell in love with sports.
Yes.
Right?
I did a couple of those at Princeton back in the day in the 80s when I was at WNBC Radio. And it's sobering. It's perspective. I hate saying that, but it's a perspective check, but it makes your heart just like reach out to these people, whatever you can do.
When they're on the medal stand and they're celebrating, they're looking at their family and their families are crying because they've just been accepted. Like, there's nothing better. And you walk away, Dave, like, so inspired, and you're like, wait a second, this is what it's all about. This is what we can do. And if I could just share those stories on that level, man, I'm really lucky to be a part of it because I get more out of it than what I put in.
Absolutely. You got anything on your upcoming schedule, say this summer, working with those folks this year? I know you're busy, so I mean.
Yeah. So last year we were in Berlin for the World Games, and so it goes every 2 years. And the hope is Italy in the World Games next year for so last year was the Summer Games. And next year will be the Winter Games.
Okay.
Really looking forward to it, and our relationship continues, and to share those stories. We're again really, really lucky to be a part of it.
Hey, you mentioned a few seconds ago, being that kid. So you grew up in Phoenixville, but first of all, a backstory on your parents. How'd they get from India to Phoenixville, and what was your upbringing like? I'm going to guess. Go out on a limb. You were the only Indian American kid in your neighborhood, right?
I was, that's a good guess. So my dad came. To America in 1969.
Right.
Had less than $5 in his pocket. My mom at the time had my brother, and they stayed in Calcutta in India. And my dad basically, again, lived in a YMCA, collected, saved. And then my mom came over in 1971 with my brother, who at the time by then was 3. And then they lived in an apartment in Harrisburg, and then they eventually settled in Phoenixville. And then I was born in 75. Well, I'm sorry. We eventually moved to West Philly, right down the street from Penn. And then
nice.
when I was, well,
What
yeah,
street?
exactly.
What street?
Baltimore Avenue.
No,
Baltimore Avenue.
Yeah. Like in the 50s.
Yeah. You know all about that area? Yeah. So we moved to the suburbs in 76, Phoenixville. We're extremely small, quiet, sleepy town, only known for the steel mill. Bethlehem Steel and Phoenixville Steel were the two big things in the state when it came to that material. And then my dad was old school. My dad's still old school. My dad was old school, but he loved football. He loved American football.
American football. Wow.
Loved it. He loved cricket. He loved American football. And he would watch Eagles games, and he would yell at the screen. He'd yell at Dick Vermeil. He'd yell at Ron Jaworski. So
I'm going to tell Jaws. I'm going to tell Jaws next time I talk.
No. Here's the thing. Jaws and I, the craziest thing is Jaws and I are really good friends. So it's like a full circle, right? It's amazing. Actually, I got a Jaws jersey down the hallway next to Herm Edwards. So so he would yell at these guys, and I would be so sympathetic. So what I would do is when I was really young, I'd go every Sunday morning, go get the Inquirer that was in our Sunday doorstep, pull out the comic section, pull out the sports section. By like 8 years old, I'd study all the stats and the numbers. So then when my dad was yelling at these guys, I'd be like, Dad, don't get mad at Jaws. Jaws has done this. He's like sixth in the league in this and that. So it was like the first time I was actually sports reporting and informing an uninformed audience because my dad was so passionate. So he took me to my first Eagles game. He took me to my first Phillies game, Sixers, Flyers. So like I was all in, and it was the only way me and my dad can have a bond and communicate with each other, where my dad wasn't, asking me about my grades, and my dad actually talked to me. And I identified that way, and it was a way I could connect with my older brother. And it just fit. It made sense, to the point where, weeknights I'd be downstairs in our basement. I had a mini hoop. I set up a league. And I'd have all these games. And then at one point, my mom comes down the steps, Dave, and she goes, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "You're talking to somebody. Who are you talking to while you're playing basketball?" I said, "I'm doing play-by-play. If I don't do play-by-play, the game doesn't count." And she's like, "What?" I said, "I got to do play-by-play to make sure the game's an official game." And then, you'd write who won these games and all that. And that's kind of how I fell in love with all of whatever.
That's really where you got your start, in 1981 in the basement.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
You got 100%. Me right there. Been there. Oh, good for you, man. I totally relate.
That's all we know, right? That's all we know. And
I played. Yeah.
Yeah, but by the time I was 14, I realized I wasn't athletic enough to play in the NBA or have that dream. And then
did you play in high school at all? You play any high school ball?
I played baseball. I played football and basketball, but nothing in high school. Cause I was by the time I was 14, I was like, I know I'm not that great. I still did, I would play basketball with all my boys outside, but I didn't have the commitment to try out for football in August. Cause I was like, I'm not doing it. But I knew at 14, Dave, I knew, and Jared at 14, I would watch SportsCenter every night, every morning, the reruns. But at 14, one night, I watched and the light bulb went off, and I said, I want to do this. I remember watching Chris Berman on a highlight, and I was like, I want to be the first Indian American on SportsCenter at 14. And it was crazy, dumb.
Berman was the guy. Was he the guy you patterned yourself off of, or was the inspiration at that time?
So I found a way. It's a great question there, Jared. I found a way to find people that I liked, but I also knew that I was not them. Smart. I loved Dan Patrick's delivery. I thought Keith Olbermann was absolutely brilliant.
Because he is.
So I would take pieces, and find out. Oh, Costas was phenomenal. I understand why is Costas like it. Harry Callis. Why was he so good at play-by-play? I got to take this. Mark Zumoff. So it was constant. Merrill Reese. I was constantly taking things from people that fit my personality, and that's kind of how I did what I did.
Makes sense. So do you still like call up any quotes or anything from those folks? Because I could tell you, like, hearing it, my brother and I all the time, Dad, when Saddam Hussein, as a weird example, when he was taken out, Dad, you came into the room and you go, Saddam Hussein, out of here.
That's amazing. It was amazing.
And I'll hear all of the influences, Dad, that you had through the years. Kevin, do you still bring up anything like that and sort of anything that's topical and happens?
All the time, Jared. When I'm with my buddies, like you said, we play wiffle ball with my boys. I'll do the out of here, I'll do the whiff, or gone that Dan Patrick has. Because I go back to being a kid with my kids, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So I've got a couple things too that I like that I do that I don't force. I just naturally, if it comes, it comes. I've always believed that if the minute you force something, that's the minute you're not yourself.
Right.
It's got to happen organically.
Speaking of what you do you have any thoughts about doing play-by-play at some point?
Yeah. It was part of my contract, the early part of my career at ESPN, where I would do 4 games a year.
What sport?
It was college basketball, college football, and I've been talking to people through the years, and they've all said I should look into it. And to be honest with you, I pulled it out of my contract when I got the morning SportsCenter with Hannah Storm. In 2010, 2011, and we redid my deal in 2012. I pulled it out of my contract because I was like, you know what? Studio is where I want to live right now to get better. If I'm pulling myself away, I won't be better at one thing. I'll be good at 3 things. I'd rather master one thing.
Yeah.
And I've stuck with it. And Dave, now to your point, and I think Jared can relate to this. I don't want to do if I was asked to do play-by-play, I'd say, okay, let's see what games would they be. I don't want to be away from my family more than I have to now. They're still at an age where they like their dad, and I don't want to miss out on those moments.
So when they go to college or when they're out of college, and then you can start doing play-by-play.
Exactly, Dave.
I tell you what, I was and am very lucky with Jarrett, Jordan, and Abby. With me being away a lot when they were in high school, but I saw a really good number of their games. I mean, they both played hoops. And Jordy played football, and I know exactly what you're talking about. And your kids are 10 and 12, so you darn sure do not want to, if you can help it.
Yeah, and 7. I can't forget about my daughter.
No, please don't. Oh, no, never ever do that. No question about that. Hey, acting. You've done a little bit of acting. Those SportsCenter commercials. That one with Elle, where that what was it?
The artichoke. Yeah.
You didn't have any lines, but your expression were spot on.
Well, Dave,
I mean, I don't know if they give awards for that. Have you the most expressive face by a sports anchor of Indian American descent? But you'd win.
Well, Dave, the original script had lines with me, and when we sat down and we did a gazillion takes. And it didn't feel natural. At one point, I told the director, I said, do you think I should be talking here? And we went back and forth, and we did a couple of, hey, let's rewrite. And then they came back and they're like, it's not a bad idea. You should actually be quiet here and just lead with your expressions while Elle's here and you're in disbelief that we're doing this and you're in disbelief on what you're seeing. And I was like, actually, that could work out. And it worked out really well, doing it that way.
You crushed it, man. I'm telling you, it was. You really did. And Elle, I thought Elle was very good too. Did she act in high school or college or anything?
She did. Elle is a natural actress. She is a thespian. Oh my God, she understands nuance, pause. If you watch Elle in anything, when she does Taking the L, she leans into it, and she leans into her theater background. She's really good at it. Really good.
We've never met. Big fan. Hopefully down the road at some point we'll meet.
Are you a Sopranos fan by any chance? Because I'm just thinking the Chris scene A, B. You could have led an acting masterclass there.
The Sopranos. I love the Sopranos. Absolutely.
Okay. You and Jarrett need to talk then. Oh, he and Jordy know like line for line. And I told him, oh God, who's the great trainer that had Tyson over in he's Teddy Atlas. Teddy Atlas.
Teddy Atlas.
Teddy
Yeah.
Atlas has a great charity dinner every like November. And one year I walk in and it was like the surviving cast of The Sopranos. And I came back and told Jarrett and Jordy, and they were flipping out. Hey, I got a chance. I said hello to Paulie Walnuts. I said hello to this guy. They were freaking out. They're like, you can't, no way. But it's just so funny that he brought that up, man. We love that show. And I'm telling you, that he and his brother, they have a book in them that the movie and that
I love that.
We got a good movie idea. We got a good movie idea. Yeah.
I love that.
Hey, Kev. Hey, man. I really appreciate you joining us, man. When we were sitting down and said, who are some of the guys and gals that we want to get on the air? And I said, I got to get my man Negandhi. Come on, I see him at 3 o'clock on the Pacific Coast, and he's an Eagles fan. I said, we're going to try to, let's call him up and see if we can hook it up. And I'm glad the schedule worked out.
Hey, I look up to you. It's an honor, man. I really appreciate it. I love your little text on whatever suit I'm wearing or whatever you're talking about. Hey, keep me going.
Folks, by the way, my boy is clean. I'm telling you, had on, was it yesterday, sort of a pink, a purple kind of deal.
Yep.
I don't know if I could wear it, but you wore it well. You had your fashion sneakers on. You were rocking. I don't know what do you go to Jay Wright's tailor or Pat Riley's old tailor or something? I mean, you got good stuff. Either that or your wife has really good taste. So I
appreciate that. Now I get into it, and I always tell people, man, it doesn't matter about a suit, but if you have a good tailor, you're going to be sharp no matter what.
Boom.
Go. Hey, before we get out, what happens? Kellen Moore's offense taking over, righting the ship, the defense. You got Fangio. What's going to happen this season?
I feel really good. If they can protect Jalen and deal with the blitz, I feel really good about this team. And then I kind of want to see this secondary grow up a little bit because they've got some young guys, so they've got to grow up.
Talent. Yeah,
a ton of talent. To your point about the talent, though, Howie has nailed the drafts. Now it's up to the Georgia kids, especially the two on that defensive line, to come through on the talent.
Give me something. Give me something.
Exactly.
It helps now that they got a back end, though, right? Like I keep hearing Isaiah Rodgers. I hear, guys that, he might even start over the 2 draft picks.
Yeah.
So it's going to be an exciting season.
I feel really good.
If you ever have a chance, have you met Mark Gubazar?
Yes, him and I go back and forth. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Okay, all right. We'll have to get a chain because we do this during the football season. I'm on a chain with my high school guys. Then I'm on a chain with Gooby, Sosha, and a couple other guys and Trout, who are psycho Eagle fans. So I'll
count me in.
It'll be great.
I'm on multiple ones, man. So count me in. I
see the chat. You. Kevin Negandhi added to the chat.
Absolutely. Kev, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Pleasure seeing you guys. All right. My best.
Thanks so much, man. I hope to see you in Seattle at some point.
Absolutely. Talk to you soon, guys.
All right. Be good.
Baby, can't you hear my call?
Thanks for joining us, everybody, on the Hey Now podcast. We really appreciate it. Hey, for my Seattle friends, an update and a piece of news for you. As you may or may not know, I'm 8.5 years out. As a prostate cancer survivor, very lucky, thank God, knock some wood. Coming up on Tuesday, September 10th, the Mariners, along with our partners, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health, holding a free screening of prostate cancer. You guys 50 and older, even 40 and older, and especially African-American men. I really, if you haven't been tested recently, I really suggest and recommend that you get this test. I had no symptoms at all. And the only reason I found it was because we were redoing an insurance policy. Took a test, it came back, the PSA was high, and we got all over it and went to some experts. Next thing I know, I do have prostate cancer. We got it taken out January 15th of 2016, Dr. King's birthday. But you got to have a ticket for this Tuesday, September 10 event. Free screening, thanks to our partners, Virginia Mason Franciscan Health. Very, very important. And for more information, head over to our Hey Now socials, and I'll have even more information. But highly recommend if you're 40 and even especially 50 years of age or older to get the test. It's harmless, painless. It's just a blood test. The life you save may be your own.